Right now on Tech Radio, Trump, tariffs, and Irish tech.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. You're welcome to episode 1063, looking at the 7 biggest stories of the week, including how Trump tariffs will affect tech, catfishing online, could be a thing of the past, and bad news from Microsoft on your Word and Excel apps. Let's get to it.
From techcentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty, and as Niall Kitson is away this week, joining us in his place is our media team writer who specialises in computing, IT and economics and politics probably as well. Jason Walsh, how are you, Jason?
Very well, Dusty. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure as always. Did we pick the right week to combine tech and tariffs and politics and everything that's going on? What's your take on what happened with Trump this week?
It's astonishing. I mean, it just, something that I've been whinging on about for a long time is that Ireland is far too heavily reliant on FDI. The FDI, the foreign direct investment from the US firms, very welcome in Ireland, transformed the country, but could always be taken away. Now, threat is that it's going to be taken away. Trump has announced sweeping tariffs, including some rather strange ones like 46% on Vietnam. Ireland, as a member of the EU, is getting hit by a 20% tariff. It is very bad news for Ireland. We don't know how it's going to play out in the long run, but it is impossible that it won't have an impact on the amount of American corporations who operate in Ireland. A very easy win for them now is to pull back some operations from abroad, bring them back to the States, and Trump gets his victory and they get to continue doing business. Now, what's interesting is 2 of the sectors that are considered strategically vital to the US are semiconductors, so CPUs and other chips. Obviously, Ireland has Intel. There's no specific tariff being put on semiconductors. There was concern there would be like a special extra tariff being put on semiconductors, but there isn't. Intel has been building a new fab down in Leixlip. Obviously, these things take years to build, so it's not going to go away anytime soon. But there are also sort of broader questions about how Intel's doing. Is it going to sell off its fabrication? It got rid of its chief executive, changed strategy, all of that. The other side is, of course, the pharma stuff, not really directly related to tech, although they use a lot of tech operationally. It has been spared tariffs for the meantime, which I think is just the US recognizing that it needs to get its drug supply chain up and running at home before it can take anything back. But, you know, when you think about all of the Irish people working in multinationals and in the economy around multinationals, not just people directly employed by them, an awful lot of them are in technology. We always think of the big names, the Googles, the Apples. There are others, the Microsofts, the Avids, but there are plenty of smaller ones as well. This is not good news for Ireland. We just don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but it's not good news.
Do you think that the tariffs are going to affect the price that we pay for laptops and other tech gear or gadgets, smartwatches, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it will. It's an interesting question because obviously those things by and large are not manufactured in the United States. That's part of the whole issue is that Trump at least claims that he wants to bring back US manufacturing capacity. So that stuff's typically being made in Korea and Taiwan and in different parts of East Asia. But yes, I think it will because I think that any kind of friction in a supply chain or in a production chain is usually just applied at the end and they slap the higher price on. And even if it's not directly relevant, we end up paying it. I mean, we all remember the days when $200 things in the US would all cost £200 as it was when they arrived in Ireland. Well, you know, I think it's something like that. I think prices will just rise.
It's interesting because Apple have a big facility here and they've just reported a 60% profit increase. And kind of the percentages are whatever, but the increase was to $62 billion. That's for Apple Ireland. It's incredible, isn't it?
It is incredible. I mean, Apple Ireland is a brass plate operation to some degree. It is, you know, sort of enjoying tax privileges. But on the other hand, it's also got a substantial workforce. It actually does real work. So the question ultimately in the long term will be how much revenue should be passing through Apple Ireland. Should it be all of the global revenue? Probably not. Should it be all of the EU revenue? Yeah, probably. It has a legitimate claim to being an EU operation. So, yeah.
Also with Mr. Trump, TikTok is it's not really making the headlines, but they have a deadline of this Saturday, April 5th, to sell their US operations. Do you think that it's going to happen? Have you been hearing anything at all about this?
I do think it's going to happen. The reason it hasn't been in the headlines is simply the headlines are completely wall-to-wall Trump tariffs. But you'll remember this story twice before. You'll remember it during Trump's first term when he supported banning it, and then you'll remember during the end of Biden's term, the ban came into force and Trump said he would unwind it, which he has subsequently done with the proviso that it's sold to US company. Obviously concern about China there. There has been talk about all sorts of people buying it. At one point, Elon Musk, that's highly unlikely considering how leveraged in debt he is. But also, like, the most recent one I heard is the owner of OnlyFans. Or Andreessen Capital as well, Mark Andreessen, who was one of the coders of the first mainstream web browser, Netscape. He's now a venture capitalist. I think it will go ahead. I think it will get bought up by the US. I find it astonishing that Heaven and Earth was moved to save a, slightly trivial social media app, but there you are. It was.
Yes, true. You mentioned Mr. Musk there and about him being leveraged in debt, but I'm sure you're aware that the Forbes richest people in the world list has come out, and way up there at the top is Elon Musk.
Yeah, well, when I say he's leveraged on debt, I don't mean like you and I with our overdrafts and mortgages, Dusty. I mean the more sophisticated, rarefied kind of debt that billionaires use so that they don't actually have to have an income and therefore don't pay income tax. Yeah, I mean, Musk's been up to some interesting stuff. He got one of his companies, XAI, to buy X, formerly Twitter. That's a kind of odd move. Clearly a bit of financial engineering. X is, I believe it's back in the black more or less, but it's never going to be a major, profitable operation, so that gets it off the books and stops it from devaluing his empire. I believe some of the debt, the bank debt that was taken on to buy Twitter has been written down, so it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. It's kind of like, who was it? Was it Charles Haughey? He was the first one that I knew had said it. He said, if I borrow $1 million from the bank and I don't pay it back, the bank have a problem, not me.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that with Musk as well.
I think that's true with all these people. I can't remember the exact sort of name for the strategy, but it's something like borrow and then expire.
No, I know what it is. It's buy, borrow, die. And essentially what they do is they buy things with borrowed money and then they die, so they never pay for it and the principle of it is, and it's actually very clever, right? You cannot tax borrowed money.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's not income, so not income tax.
As you say, it doesn't work for people at our level, but
the bet is, of course, that the assets that you buy are going to grow in value and therefore will outpace the debt, which has frankly been historically true for the last 30 years. Whether or not it's going to be true in this new era that we appear to be going into, I don't know. But you had some other news about Elon Musk, I do believe.
Well, the thing I was going to say about him being the richest person in the world, this is what I think is interesting, okay? So he's valued at $342 billion. At number 2 is Mark Zuckerberg, all right? Mark Zuckerberg is $127 billion poorer. Less.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I mean, I believe it's literally true, but I think that Zuckerberg may be either plowing more of his money back into Facebook or Meta.
Maybe.
He may be. There's some kind of accounting thing. I mean, I'm not telling you that Elon Musk's a broke man or ever going to be a broke man. He ain't. But
well, listen, do you know what? If he ever is a broke man, he can always rely on his new government job, where, of course, he's making the headlines with the Department of Government Efficiency. DOGE.
Yeah, well, he can't rely on it because he's getting sacked.
I was about to ask you about this, all right? Because Trump is going around telling people, Elon's a great guy, but he's going to be leaving soon. He's got big companies he pays to pay attention. The things he's been doing here is amazing, and all that kind of stuff. So he'll be gone soon. And then Musk is going, nah. Fake news. What's the truth?
During the 1980s, there was a kind of academic discipline called Kremlinology. And the idea was that because the Soviet Union never really told the truth about its internal affairs and didn't publish material, you had to have experts in Washington and London and Paris who could sort of read the tea leaves and what the Soviets were up to. They just made it all up. So in that spirit, I'm going to do the same with Trump and Musk, because the truth is we have no idea what's going on. But what I feel is two things are happening. Number one, Musk just pumped a load of money into an election in Wisconsin for a judge and lost. The conservative candidate that Musk was supporting lost. That's obviously an irritation to Trump, who should be riding really high, and all his appointees should easily be sailing through their various electoral and other processes. So probably Trump is a bit annoyed with them. Secondly, it's damaging. I mean, damaging it. They have in Italy now. They're talking about putting security, like police, on Tesla dealerships. Musk's close association with the Trump administration, and frankly, increasingly with extreme politics in Europe, sort of intervening on the side of the AfD in Germany and so on, is really damaging the bottom line in terms of the revenue and the profit of Tesla and possibly SpaceX. The thing is, SpaceX is kind of propped up at the minute by Starlink, so that's quite profitable. Tesla's share price, which is what people mostly talk about, has come down dramatically, but it's still massively overinflated. It would have to be not only the world's biggest car company to justify that valuation, it would have to be bigger than all of the other car companies combined. Yeah. Because there's just this expectation around Musk's fans that he's going to somehow deliver robotics, he's going to deliver cars that drive them. None of these things are going to happen. They're not going to happen.
Or they're not going to happen in the immediate future, or they're just never going to happen.
I think self-driving cars will never happen. Like primitive ones will exist that can drive on US sort of cities where everything's a sort of equal block. But you try driving around, Tullamore or even Paris, and
exactly.
It's just a different proposition. And then the robots will happen, but I don't think they'll come from Tesla, because if you look at the likes of Boston Dynamics, they're light years ahead of Tesla's robot efforts. Are kind of embarrassing, to be honest.
My understanding with Musk's position in the US government is that there is a law which says that a special government employee has a strict 130-day cap on service.
Absolutely true, but you think that Trump couldn't have bulldozed that if he wanted to?
Well, I was about to say, the law is one thing, and then what they actually do is another. Let's get into some Irish stories for this week. And speaking of the law, catfishing could soon be outlawed in Ireland. That's the practice of impersonating someone online in a way that causes alarm, distress or harm. And one of the big cases that's come up, it's with another podcast with the two Johnnies. I don't know if you've been following that story.
Not massively, but I have been hearing little bits and pieces of it.
I've got the gist of it. Somebody in a GAA club or something like that who is, I think, chasing one of the two Johnnies, but pretending to be somebody else. There's been many, many other cases, though, where it has caused harm and distress to people. And because it is something that is illegal in the physical world, in our day-to-day world, you cannot go around impersonating somebody else. They're now making an amendment to the snazzily entitled Non-Fatal Offences Against the Person Act 1997 to make it an offence to do the same thing online, and it'll carry a 5-year prison term. Interestingly, the new law will enable Gardaí to make direct basic data requests to tech companies without having someone to go to court first.
That's interesting. I mean, that really does change the tenor of it, because on one level you think, well, I'm surprised it isn't already illegal, and perhaps it's for the good. But another law that allows, or sort of chips away at our right to privacy is slightly worrying, which is not to understate the
seriousness of it.
Appalling
exactly.
behavior.
Yeah. It's like everything else. I mean, the usual argument is, well, if you've nothing to hide, why are you worried?
Yeah, but I think we're all seeing why that has, as politics gets a little bit confusing and messy, and things that were considered okay are starting to be seen as sinister.
What do you mean?
What is permitted in any given society is defined by that society at that given time, and that can change. People have this belief that we're sort of marching forward, ever onward toward perfection, and everything gets better all the time, and we all become nicer and richer and more liberal and more compassionate and kind. And that has been the general trend since, let's say, 1945, 1946. But we can also move backwards, and we're starting to see. That we've seen that, strictly speaking, we've already seen it in, for example, Turkey. We've seen it in Russia. We're certainly seeing it potentially in the West, where a lot of the kind of liberal things that we all agreed were sort of fundamentally true and incontrovertible are starting to become contested. So things so if you take an issue like, for example, sexual orientation, sexuality, things that are legal now could be frowned upon or even illegal in the future. So
turn around to be illegal, because apparently now this is only gossip and water cooler talk. Somebody was saying that if you're going to the States, make sure that your gender is stated on your passport as either male or female, because anything else you could be turned away at the border.
Yeah, and I mean we have historical examples too. The kind of Red Scare stuff in America. So political opinion can become a sort of
True.
taboo.
Yeah, it all changes. I'm not kind of keen on it. You're right. You're saying about things change. And even if you're not happy with it, it's kind of, well, you've just got to accept it. And one of the big stories this week is that most people around the world traveling to the United Kingdom will now have to get what do they call it? An electronic travel authority, an ETA.
That's right.
All right, so that's you kind of go, oh, okay, fair. Now, Irish people are not included on that because there is a special arrangement between Ireland and the UK. But any other country, anybody else in Europe, anybody else from Canada, the States, any other country, whatever. And my understanding of it is that to get this little ETA, you have to download an app, okay, onto your phone in which you put in your name and your passport details. And that's kind of like, okay, yeah, fine, I understand that. But I also get the impression you also have to take a photograph of yourself, which will then face map you and then correlate it with the photo that's on your passport. And now all of a sudden your biometric data is on a database somewhere in the UK. And I don't like that.
No, I don't like that either.
I have nothing to hide other than my beautiful face, of course, which is why I have a face for podcasting. But I don't like the thought of that. And it's like when you go into the States on holidays and stuff like that, and they fingerprint you. I mean, what a wonderful welcome.
I know. I mean, I don't know what the answer is to this. I was just thinking earlier today about Joseph Weizenbaum, who was a computer scientist and philosopher in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, long dead now. He wrote a book called Computer Power and Human Reason. This guy invented the chatbot, I might point out. Okay. And he later came to be a really serious critic of AI and technology, said that it was fundamentally dehumanizing. I think he's someone we really, just on the AI issue, we really need to interrogate now, and we need to read his book again. But, the reason I mention him is I think we do need to take a critical approach to technology. When I was younger, was susceptible to just generic techno joy. I thought that every new computer, every new platform, every new thing that was coming out was just making everything better. Yes, and it was, and it felt like liberation. But I think there are, there's a dark heart to technology, and there's a dark heart to the administrative sort of functions. And Weizenbaum would argue. Weizenbaum, did argue that that computers were a counter-revolution. They weren't a revolution, that they standardized everything, that they were sort of fundamentally dehumanizing. This was, by the way, his experience in early childhood in Nazi Germany, and he was Jewish, so, you can see why he would have an intimate kind of understanding of how state power can be used against people, not just state power, corporate power as well, but just the machinery of technology does play a role in this. And I think we do need to think about that sort of thing.
That's a very, very interesting point of view. One other quick story from Ireland this week, drone deliveries. Niall and myself were talking last week about flying cars. I think if it would ever happen, and I mentioned we've got drones doing deliveries now. There's a company called Manna, which is a great name. All right, essentially what they do is like this little helicopter drone thing hovers over your house and drops a bag full of goodies into your back garden. Fantastic. They're working a lot with Just Eat at the moment. They've just got 30 million in new funding, so they're expanding to Cork. So keep an eye out for that. Elsewhere, one or two other quick stories for you. ChatGPT. When they first launched, and we remember kind of going, oh my God, it's so fast. 1 million people signed up for it in 5 days. This week, Sam Altman posted on Twitter to say that ChatGPT are now adding 1 million new users per hour.
Yeah, I mean, it's astonishing. I mean, we've all seen there are real issues around AI. Again, I won't go off on one, but like the copyright stuff we've seen just to do with OpenAI in the last week, where the Studio Ghibli memes have been everywhere. I mean, again, Miyazaki, I know, a critic of AI who thinks it's anti-human. So to see his art style being used just feels a bit tone deaf, frankly, because Sam Altman from OpenAI himself used one of those as his avatar.
Exactly.
I think this copyright issue is going to have to be dealt with, and I don't think there's going to be a good settlement that pleases everyone.
I think it'll eventually come around. I mean, everybody used to download the music for free using all kinds of dodgy apps around the year 2000, and nobody does it anymore. So it will get sorted. Listen, one thing on your mind was websites. in that area are complaining of AI scraping.
Yeah,
Why?
those of us who have dabbled in website design back in the day will remember the robots.txt file, a little text file you put in your server. The polite Google and Alta Vista and all the rest of them bot would read it and go, oh, I'll index these pages it's telling me to, and I'll ignore the rest. And it was in their interests to play nice. The AI bots are not playing nice. They're sucking everything out of sites, and they're doing it because they need more and more content to build their models, to build their engines, and they're ignoring instructions from the sites to not do it. And the problem here isn't just the copyright issue, though that is an issue. The problem is it is costing them money, because every little server request costs a tiny, tiny fraction of money. Well, these servers are getting slammed. Some really big sites have come out, like Wikipedia, saying that they cannot afford to be paying for this, that this is deleterious to their ability to exist. So, imagine you had a small website and running on Azure, and it spun up a few extra 1,000 instances just to,
Well, exactly. I'm just kind of looking, like, if it cost 1 cent or something like that, you kind of, what's a cent? But if you're getting like 100,000 of them an hour, that's €1,000.
Yeah.
All right. At just 1 cent per little. So it does add up a little bit. Last story, speaking of things adding up and all kinds of things, Microsoft came out with a statement this week saying that they want... I can hear you frowning already.
I know. But look, I do accept that the world is changing and what I like is going away. I am not, unaware of that, but this is just another example of things I don't like. It's not your software anymore. Microsoft wants you to... all of these businesses will tell you that going to the cloud and going to subscription is good for you because we can do automated updates and we can do all kinds of stuff. And that's all true. But what's also true is that they really like the subscription revenue because, first of all, they hope you'll forget about it and just keep paying. And second of all, it just allows them to do better financial planning, which is, it's just more feed the stock price and it's user hostile. You don't own your software. You can be taken away from you at any moment. And you know what? Look, when I came out of college or art school when I was 21, I couldn't afford Photoshop either. So yes, Adobe Cloud, Creative Cloud being available for a monthly subscription there's definitely an argument for it. But over the course of a career, that monthly fee, man, that's too much money.
It adds up. Now, this is the story where Microsoft wants businesses to replace permanent software with subscriptions. And I'm absolutely with you, Jason, on that.
But they're going to do it because, internally in businesses, they don't like capital expenditure. So if they move it on to operating expenditure, and plus people do look. Also, it's usually attached to some carrot, which cloud storage, stuff like that people like, that's handy. It's going to happen. You aren't going to have any software unless you go open source. Well,
there you go. You got LibreOffice is a really good package. So if you want, I like having apps on my computer because there are times when you don't have connection to the internet.
Absolutely.
Right? And you can continue to work away. If you are tied to doing everything online and you have no internet connection, you can do nothing. We see it with mobile phones. All right. Your laptop now becomes a brick.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
more than that, even I like native applications that run on for the operating system and CPU that I'm running because they run nice and smooth, not these entire websites just dumped into a kind of virtual box and then called an application. And I used to think, why is this thing like this? All it does is send text messages and it can barely run on my massively fast computer.
Jason, always great to chat with you about what's happening in the news. Thanks for giving us your view on things this week.
Thanks for having me.
Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland.
One of the great things about tech is being able to see possibilities where others see obstacles and to come up with solutions using computer design, 3D visualization, and more. Our guest today, David McIntyre, comes from what he describes as a neurodivergent family. And he shares his story with Niall Kitson about the extraordinary power of seeing the world differently.
David, we like to talk to people that have had an unconventional career path when it comes to coming into the product design, into the tech space. Tell us a little bit about your route, because you absolutely were not part of an apprenticeship or a computer science program or anything like that. So tell us about your background.
Actually, it all ties together about what I'm actually doing now with my life and the business that I've built. When I was younger, I'm dyslexic, so education was quite difficult for me. And I was very lucky. My father had an engineering company here in Mayo, where I'm based. And he brought me in as an apprentice around 15 years of age. So I left school around 15. And that kind of progressed over time. And 3D and CAD CAM started to come into the business around that time. And I was the only kid in the room, I suppose, that was a computer literate and was able to utilize the tools of CAD CAM and CAD. And that was really the start of my journey into product design or industrial design or mechanical design. I'm kind of a nuts and bolts guy, really, where I was able to use my dyslexic powers, if you like. I can see things in 3D in my mind and fit parts together. And that was a huge advantage when it came to using CAD, for instance, especially SolidWorks and them tools. So everything moved from the 2D platform to a 3D platform. And I was just in the right place at the right time, really. And my skill sets were ready to go.
And of course, you went from sort of that kind of tool-making background via a kind of a corporate route as well. You didn't go from small business to small business necessarily.
No, I didn't. I got lucky. I got a great job in Waterford Stanley in Aga and really cut my teeth there engineering-wise. We had a great leader that helped us and great engineers around that helped me a lot. And that was really proper product and engineering design that we were doing there, really from concept stage right through to production. Like I would have been on production lines figuring out the right screws to use and the right tools to use, everything. So from a mechanical engineering or a physical product design, we would have the conceptual idea, we would sketch it out, we would design it in 3D, we would problem solve it, we would then assemble it in the R&D lab, make sure the tools fitted, a whole process from beginning to end, which was a remarkable opportunity for anybody.
So you kind of moved then into a kind of a management position there where you were looking after a team of people. How did you find that experience, especially as you mentioned, having dyslexia? Did you feel that you were dealing with an additional problem to other people when it was coming to getting your point across, or did it feel like a natural progression in your career?
Well, I wanted to progress. It's one of the things, traits about dyslexia is a fire or an ambition to always wanting to do more. And it comes actually as part of a self-confidence issue. You mightn't believe that the way I talk today, but it's driven by a low self-esteem that you're always trying to prove yourself. So I was always looking for an opportunity to go into management and always looking for an opportunity to start my own company too, by the way. Managing, I think it was 6 guys or 7 guys at the time in a design room. It was natural enough, actually, because I understood design. I had immersed myself in design. I understood how to start a conceptual idea, how to actually make it to a product. So I had that experience. Managing people then was interesting because then you're looking at strengths and weaknesses. And it took a couple of months where I would actually just sit in the ground base, if you like, looking at the designers working to figure out who could do what and how they could be progressed. And I came up with a very simple system of just utilizing the best skills to get the best out of the production. Like we were in that job, it was fast moving. We were designing products that were going to the floor maybe the next day to be built. So there was a high pressure of delivery there all the time. So you just find the tools of. I was not trained to be a manager, so it was a very steep learning curve. But I thrived in it. I must say I did thrive in it. I came up with a system that worked very, very well. I was able to get the team motivated. I was able to train the team in the right way to design. From the ground up, and I was able to bring in systems that actually helped made their job easier and more economic, if you like, for the company. So yeah, it went well. I can't say that managing a diverse team that I am now is as easy, but it certainly was a help at that stage.
What's fascinating about the Cubbie story to me is that the idea was brought to you initially as a pitch. So Tell me a little bit about how that came to be and how you approach that particular problem.
So the idea of Cubbie was not brought to me as a pitch at all, Niall. What happened is my daughter was diagnosed at 2.5 years of age. And when you get a diagnosis, she was the first of my daughters to be diagnosed. I've 4 daughters. 2 of them are autistic. 3 of them are dyslexic. So we're quite a normal neurodivergent family. When you get a diagnosis, you're usually brought into what they call an early birth training system. And it's usually presented by Western Care here in Mayo, for instance, Ability West in Galway. Them kind of charities deliver this program. You meet different parents in this, maybe 12 or so parents, all have just got diagnosis. And at that time, to get a diagnosis at 2.5 was not the norm. Usually a child would be 8 to 15 years of age before they would get a diagnosis. So we got a great mix of different family levels. In that room, there was parents in mourning, and I can say that I was one of those. I instantly understood the issues that was facing my daughter as being having a disability, as I have, and her education. I looked at, there was adult children there, or young adult children that got a diagnosis. There was parents that wouldn't tell other their siblings or their family that there was a diagnosis got. There was a lot of shame, if you like, and denial. And it was like to me that there was a mourning in the room, that there was some kind of death. And one day I was walking into that room, and it just dawned on me that my dyslexia was a real big value add for my ability to be able to design and to be able to put products together and to use different experiences quickly to determine the solutions. And that's when I decided that something needed to be done for people with autism. What you were talking about there, the pitch, it wasn't really a pitch. There was an issue. I was asked to design a sensory wall for a school, actually locally. And I guess that's where you're coming from with the pitch. So my Lexan again. But the idea of a sensory wall was, locks and things that you could twist and things you could move and etc. And I was kind of saying, well, how does that actually work? How does that work for somebody with sensory processing issues? And what I couldn't understand is that the same tool was used to calm somebody or to energize somebody. And there's 4 different types of sensory need. And I just couldn't understand how one tool could actually do all 4 things, if you like. So that was the question. How does one tool do that? And then the idea came along that we would develop a tool that would adjust to the sensory type of that person. So that was the innovation. That was the initial innovation. And that first innovation is the one that failed.
I think it's something like in the way that they say, what is it? Your first 4 businesses will fail before your 5th one becomes a success. That there was an awful lot of trial and error involved. Just to describe what Cubbie looks like, it's effectively an enclosed space. So where did that come in as your idea for what the product would look like? I mean, did you look at the sensory wall and go, well, do you know what, there's all this external stuff going on around as well. How does somebody focus if that's something that they need at any point?
It's a good question, because it's 8 years since I really came up with the concept. So there was lots of different things, and how do you approach a design is interesting. Okay, so there's different elements, and my concern really was education. So my first concern was education. I wanted my child to have access to a mainstream education. That's what I wanted. So how was I going to deliver that in an education setting? Educators have no space in their buildings. Even the new designs, space is a limitation. So whatever we designed had to be in a small footprint. The next thing I was looking at is really about what journey would the product take with my daughter in her life. And that's where the idea of that we would build something that would follow her through the education process. So, for instance, that it would be available not only in primary schools, but in secondary schools and in third level schools, the same product. So if you understand autism, you will understand as well that they like the same repetitive stuff. They like the to be on the train tracks and to be able to predict what is going to happen. They have a prediction issue. That's what sensory processing is. It's a prediction issue. We all predict the future. Our brain is blind. So, our eyes can't actually get that information to the brain quick enough. It has to meet somewhere in the middle. So the eyes are only telling your brain, yes, you were right in your prediction. So what happens in a neurodivergent mind with sensory processing is that prediction is incorrect and it throws an error back. So it had to be uniformed. It had to be the same. Then we looked at the 4 sensory types and how would we make a product that would match the needs of all 4 sensory types. So we came up with the idea of a blank canvas. So when you walk into Cubbie, there's nothing in it. It's a blank space. And that is to suit a certain type of sensory need. Then we can turn on and turn off the audio-visual experience as needed. And it's very specific. Again, we looked at what's best out there and what's not needed. And we were very lucky as well at the beginning. Our first customer was Temple Street Hospital. This is before COVID. And their biggest concern was hygiene. So again, that kind of built into our design elements as well. Now, we had design elements that we had in there that we've now taken out. For instance, we had it padded inside. We found that we didn't need to pad it inside. So therefore, why have it padded inside? And another thing we try to do is reduce stigma as the person got older. I'm very aware of that with my own disability. So how do you get rid of that, or how do you try to fill that gap and the stigma as the person gets older? So there was a lot of different elements that were used there. The reason I made it out of steel, for instance, was for 2 reasons. I know steel. That's what I worked with all my life. But it also gave me flexibility in the design. I knew from being a seasoned designer that the idea of getting your design right first time is not the usual, that's for sure. That there's always tweaking and movement, and having a soft tooling approach like we did allowed us to make changes quickly to the product. And also I needed something robust so that I could get swings and stuff like that into it. Swinging, especially at the younger ages, is very, very important. And I felt that was a unique element of the product that we were developing. And also the robustness of it. I knew that this would go into high-level special areas of dysregulation in high-level special schools. And it needed to be robust because so a sensory type there is that they need to load their muscles, and they will actually pull at doors and try to get that physical reaction from the product. So that was the idea, if you like, at the beginning, that it had to be robust, it had to be fit the small space, and it had to be able to adapt to the different sensory types and needs of a person, and then follow them, if you like, with their journey through the education system.
And when you talk about fitting in a small space, I imagine version 1 in your head would be a corner in a classroom or something like that. It hasn't quite worked out that way by necessity.
You're dead right, actually. The intention was to put it into a classroom. The small space, by the way, it's important. It's wheelchair accessible. That was from the beginning. We wanted a universal design, I guess, is what you're thinking about here. Is how do you make a product that actually, you can't make a product that suits everybody, but you can certainly make a product that suits a lot of people. And that's the idea of the intent as well from the design. So that again kind of has the elements within the product itself. Then it kind of drives the narrative. Yes, we thought we'd put it into the classroom first, but we quickly realized that wouldn't work. The the ethos behind Cubbie is participation in the classroom. And what we felt was, and the feedback we got was, that the children might find that the distraction of Cubbie in the corner might stop them from actually interacting with the school or the class or engage in the curriculum. So that was the first concern. And also it limited the use to the classroom, because the product itself can service a whole school. So therefore, if it was in a classroom, it was limiting it to that classroom size. So we wanted a product that was accessible to everybody in the school. So that's why we started thinking about where can we actually place it within the school. And we've been customer led there in regard to where to place it. However, we're now seeing a trend of where our most successful places to locate a Cubbie are, which is very interesting as well. And that takes time as well. You really need to get your product out there to start seeing that kind of trend coming in.
So that's kind of, I guess we've talked about the physical manifestation of the Cubbie. Of course, you've had to extend it into sort of software and looking at the development of a platform. I suppose from your personal life and gaining feedback from how the Cubbie, version 1, for want of a better term, was being used, in working with software developers to put together a compelling user experience, and with other healthcare professionals like occupational therapists, how did all those different voices come together to deliver the product as it is now? Because, as you said yourself, you got used to sort of getting the most out of people in different disciplines. So was this another sort of switch that was turned back on in your head?
It was. I got lucky, I think, in some aspects. I was in part of the New Frontier. So the first product that we developed failed. So I've always been selling the product from the very beginning. I wasn't raising money. I had no idea about raising money. I was very traditional. I put the cart before the horse. I built the product, put it out in the field, and it failed. So the reason it failed is interesting. And the other thing is I was part of New Frontiers in Galway at the time, because I had lost all my money and I was desperate to find a way. And they had a lovely stipend, which was going to fill the gap. But it actually proved to be a game changer for me. The New Frontiers had a network, which I did not have. And I think that's a weakness in Ireland in every aspect, especially in rural Ireland. And they introduced me to a guy called Shankar, who helped me develop the first MVP software. And he was an incredible guy. He'd done it for half nothing. And it was because of that introduction that we were able to get the initial software up and going. The failure in the product was the user interface. I was using third-party apps and plugins and every kind of thing to utilize the different elements of the product. And what happened is the person that was using the product, it got bored, it didn't work, it was too awkward, and then they would stop using it. So that was the first thing I had to solve, is the usability of the product. And that's where the software really kicked in. The second phase then is actually probably where wireless logic, where we wanted to connect the Cubbies so that people could walk from or transfer from primary to secondary school to third level school. So how do we build a process or software which will allow the person to bring their sensory programs or experiences with them as they progressed through the education system? And that's the connectivity, or the Internet of Things, that we have connected there. So it was part of our ambition always to deliver that. So that's how we started with the software. It was actually the user interface and the failure of the product at the beginning, which was very lucky to happen at the beginning, because a lot of people build something very expensive and then find out afterwards that it didn't work. We were lucky enough to figure that out at the beginning when it didn't cost us a lot of money. Now we have a long list of things that we have to do, but we've matured a long way since them beginning days, that's for sure.
And that idea of being able to bring your experience from primary to secondary and hopefully onto third level as well. How do these experiences get formulated? I mean, is it a case of a healthcare professional comes to you and says, look, here's our patient profile? Or does it happen in conversations with family, maybe in conversations with the young person themselves also?
So it goes really back to design, and this is now process design and innovation around process design, which is very, very interesting. It's a space that I'm focused in right now. That's where our company is right now. We're getting ready for growth. So we're looking at our processes very deeply now. The initial idea, the initial innovation about the cubbie, if you like, we call it a hub. The hub itself is a physical product. It's a steel box like a pod. The experience within it then is individualized. It's for one person at a time. Now, we've done a lot of research, and we came across an obscure piece of research out of Canada that suggested that an individualized approach was the key to a successful intervention. Okay. Then I said to myself, knowing the school system, because I had been in it and I had done my research in it, I knew that the level of expertise in the school just wasn't there to deliver a meaningful sensory experience to an individual. They don't understand sensory processing. In fact, occupational therapists train for 5-10 years to understand sensory processing issues. So how were we going to deliver a product that would solve that issue? And that then was the connectivity again to the occupational therapist team, or if you like, a telehealth or cloud-based health. So we have actually a team of occupational therapists that are at the top there in the cloud, and we built in software that allows the school to communicate to the occupational therapists and the parents to get approvals and GDPR. That occupational therapist then creates an individualized experience. In fact, they create multiples. And then the cloud pushes that back down into the cubbie and allows that person then to have that experience. And it pushes it down to all the cubbies. So no matter where they go for their experience, that cubbie will facilitate that experience. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And of course, people's, life journeys in sort of managing or, I suppose managing their ability to function in conventional society, it doesn't stop at the education system. You're looking at how people manage and integrate into the world of work. Also, particularly in certain industries where being autistic is regarded as something of a superpower, as opposed to something that might hold you back. I think that's something Elon Musk actually came out and said, that his autism was actually a superpower. So how are you seeing companies look at neurodivergence and becoming welcoming to neurodivergent employees? Is there an idea that, okay, look, we have our CSR box to tick here to show that we're welcoming, or is it a case of, no, these people are actually going to deliver value to our business and we have to create a sympathetic space for them within it?
I guess the first thing to say is that the neurodivergent community are already adding value to these businesses. They're just not aware that they're there adding value. The essence of Cubbie is participation, and education was our first idea there. And superpower is a word I used for my own dyslexia. It has caused me a lot of issues and mental health issues, etc., etc. However, I am able to do something a lot quicker and a lot more effectively than my peers usually. And that is to bring up design concepts and make it reality. The idea that 1 in 20 people are unemployed because of autism is incredible. Like, it's 80% of autistic people are unemployed. And how do we show that there's huge value in this community and potential? And that the starting point of that is education. Just to lay our point of view first is education first. We were approached by a company, and I hope they don't mind, Medtronic, who wanted to invest in in their neurodivergent community. And more so, they wanted to attract neurodivergent thinking into the company. They've seen what we were doing around Galway in particular, because it was really Galway that were the first real adopters of our offering. Like, we have it in primary, secondary schools there. We have it in the hospitals. We have it in the ATU. We have it in Galway University. It's all there. And what they were seeing was that their feeder was them colleges, and how, if they could support their neurodivergent community coming in, was the idea, and attract this kind of talent. Our ethos is value, maybe not superpower, but value within the community, and releasing potential. And I think it's an exciting space. A lot of companies will be box checking, and that's just because they don't know how to manage the diverse needs of individuals. It's a challenge in the education system. It's a challenge in the jails. It's a challenge in society. So we're looking at our corporates to solve this issue, and it's very difficult to do so. What we need to do is build tools like what we have, and more. That we are not the full answer. We're only part of it. But how do we facilitate that somebody can actually go to work and participate within the workplace? That's the key to technology. And actually it feeds my release from when I was 15 to 16 years of age, learning my trade. It was technology that would enable me to have the career I had. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had it. If I hadn't had the experience with the 3D cam and the design element, I would not be sitting here talking to you today. So how do we use technology, and the right technologies then, to actually release that potential and that superpower, if you like, or value? That's the key to it. And we need people building it. And box checking, I think we're still a lot of that happening. However, I think that with leaders like these education systems that are investing, the public spaces that are investing, and the leaders in the corporate world that are investing, like SAP as well, for instance, have a great program. It's world leading. It's incredible. They've been doing it for the last 10, 15 years. So how do we get leaders like that, and how do we support leaders like that?
And that was David McIntyre chatting with Niall Kitson. You can find out more about David at cubbie.ie or asiam.ie. Both of those links, as always, in the description notes in this podcast.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and with RTE Radio 1 Extra. In the meantime, do remember to share our podcast with a friend. Just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, or now also on YouTube. Until next time, thanks for listening. Take care.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.